Many faces are known to me, but still I have one slide about my background, because I spent actually 38 years with ABB, and starting in 1971. And I came to Ludvika then as I had been graduated in Chalmers in electronics. And my first job was to digitalize control equipment. This is something people are doing today, but we started here in 1971. So I then grew in the various management positions, and in 1988 I became global manager for the HVDC operations. At that time, within ASEA, or within ABB actually, it was the global managers were positioned out in the regions, not concentrated in Zurich, which happened later. And then also in a later period, I have responsibility for something that was called power systems. And power systems was a quite interesting business area, because we had HVDC, we have high voltage cables, we have high voltage capacitors. So we had both products and systems. And I think it was particularly important that we had the cables in the same business group. Then in 2001 I moved to Zurich, and that was at the time when they concentrated all the business area managers to Zurich, and I became then responsible for strategic development. And in 2009 I left ABB to retire, but I have not retired. I have done other things afterward, but I will not come to that here. So. First thing when I came to Ludvika, I heard about a person called Uno Lamm. He's a person, I never met him, which is interesting. I never met him, but still, I mean, the legacy of Uno Lamm was, I mean, very, very founded in the operations here in Ludvika. And I have actually written a little book about Uno Lamm later. So I studied him. And one of the things that he was known for was that he had the ability to look in the future, to understand where we are heading, in technology, but also in other things. He focused on the usefulness, and I think he was a pioneer also to actually try to understand what was needed out in the market. And he also gathered a team, which was not a team of Ludvika people. He recruited globally, actually, already at that time. Best people he could find to develop the technology and embracing new technology. And last but not least, which I will talk a little about, he was looking for strategic cooperations. And strategic cooperations could be actually with customers, it could be with sub-suppliers. And in fact also he created a competitor to himself to grow the market, which was a remarkable, I would say, insight from a person of his caliber. So one of the things, if you try to characterize the leadership that Uno Lamm represented, he was driven by a vision, and the vision was that he should develop transmission technology with DC. And one of the first things I heard when I came to Ludvika was that the world can live without HVDC, but it can be better with DC. And I think that's quite important, because then you realize that you have to actually fight for creating the market. You have to fight for making people understand how great this technology is. He was also an entrepreneur, that word was not used at the time. Today we talk about entrepreneurs. He was really one. And he created also a culture where we said that he protected the development team. He protected them so well that they actually spent over 20 years in R&D work with no projects, 0 projects, and managed to convince management over and over, this is a great idea, and there will come a time when we can actually reap the benefits of what we are doing. And also he encouraged initiative. It was not enough to be passive, you have to do it. And then also, the first project was the famous cable to Gotland. And then he also, something else that was nothing was perfect, and nothing will ever be perfect. but I think the culture isn't good enough. That's quite something that I've learned very, very recently. I've spent a lot of time recently in Japan. And you might have seen that Japan tends to fall behind now in a lot of technology areas. When they look at television, look at electric cars, look at that other countries are beating Japan today. And Japan has realized this is a problem for Japan. And the problem is they don't accept good enough. It should be perfect. And I have later also in life, I can comment that I had the pleasure to have a lunch a year ago with a chairman of the board of Hitachi Group. And he commented this point specifically. He said that's one of the things we like about the Swedish operation. They understand what they have done. It's good enough to move on. Because otherwise you lose too much time. Then also the ecosystem that he built, I mean he had Uno Lamm, he had cooperation with English Electric, with General Electric, and also he encouraged a competitor into the market because it was difficult to sell this technology if only one was able to supply it. And also had a very value-driven leadership, and if you study also, he was an extremely active and anti-Nazi. And he hired actually from Germany, Dr. Ullmann, so a lot of you must have, if Uno Lamm was the father of HVDC, Uno Lamm was the brain. Because all the theoretical work for HVDC was actually done by Uno Lamm, not by Ullmann, not by Uno Lamm. And also, as I said, he embraced and encouraged people, wherever they came from, to join this research group here. Then also, this is something I was quite interesting. Have you started using AI? That's fantastic, because I asked AI, can you explain to me why the HVDC operation in Ludvika has been so successful? Has it something to do with the organization? And this picture came out. Isn't it beautiful? Because somehow there is an AI brain that has understood the beauty, because this HVDC has always been a project-driven organization. You concentrate on a project, and the project is defined by, it's a well-defined task, it's a timeline, and it's a start and the end of a project. And that makes it so focused, and you bring together the team you need. And then, of course, to make this efficient, you have to encourage people to communicate. And that means you have to break the lines of command. But I can say here already, since I will touch about leadership, what is extremely important, that the guys, whoever they are in the top of the pyramid, they have to accept the fact that people can make decisions without going up and down. And they also have to accept that people sometimes make mistakes. But then the name of the game is not to punish people for mistakes, but rather keep this spirit going on, move on. I see a lot of faces here that have lived very well in this with these rules. Don't ask. So what was the situation when I came to Ludvika? Well, at that time, the mercury arc wells were used, and that was, I mean, one of the key features of Uno Lamm was they made the mercury arc wells good enough. Absolutely not perfect, but good enough. And on the laboratory, people were using white coats, both in the mercury arc well, but also in the control department. This was also, you should realize that at that time, they used electronic tubes in the control system, which was very advanced. And then I happened to when I joined in 1971, to digitalize, we bought chips from a startup company in California with 40 employees. The company was called Intel. And they have been doing quite well since then. So anyway, that was where we started from, and with this first generation of technology, it's quite interesting if you look at the projects that were sold with mercury arc wells. What is characteristic with this picture is that it covered the entire globe. I mean, Gotland was the first one, then you had cross-channel, you had Japan, New Zealand, Sardinia, Nelson River, and Pacific. So it's almost like you try to spread the technology around the globe as much as possible. But that was of course not, but it shows that very, very early this actually business was global. For each of these stories, if you meet the real old guys that are older than me, they can tell you stories about this project. One I heard about Sacom, I think is quite interesting because that was the most profitable HVDC project ever sold. And the reason was they made a calculation with an error in the calculation with the currency, with a factor of 3. So they got 3 times as much as they thought they should get paid. So, but that trick only worked once. So don't try, you can repeat it. But the key message here is that for each of these projects, the idea was not to have the HVDC from the beginning. There wasn't even an idea to have a project. So the early HVDC people, they convinced the customer that you need HVDC. Or actually HVDC can make this possible for you. I mean, one example was of course Pacific Intertime on the West Coast, which was a very big project. I happened to come in a very critical time of the development of HVDC because semiconductor had entered the scene, and it was in 2 forms, both microchips and also with high power thyristors. My first boss was called Karl-Erik Olsson. Some of you remember Karl-Erik? And he was a brilliant engineer. And he had studied engineering courses from Hermods. He had a formally extremely low education. But in reality, he was one of the brightest minds I ever met, because he had this idea also to foresee where development was going. So my first job was actually to work with Karl-Erik, and since I had been studying longer, I made calculations to show that he was right. And he was right every time. So that was a school for me, and I think also a school that you can do, even if you can do a lot of calculations, you can never replace people that have foresight, that have the ability to understand where we're heading. And he was brilliant in that context. He was also one of these people that spoke Ludvika English, which was a special kind of English. So then, in this time, then we started developing thyristor valves, and I started in 1971. In 1973, there was an extremely dramatic decision taken by Kurt Nicolin. He was the CEO of ASEA. He decided to close the entire the Mercury arc valve division. They closed down just like that. And we had still not developed the thyristor valves. But they put all the bets on one thing, and that is to embrace the new technology. So we had no chance. We had to deliver because the first contracts were on the way, and we managed also to develop and to make these things work. But I think for me it's today, I cannot see that a company would dare to take such a decision, that you close the existing technology before you have even developed a new one. But that was done. And we repeated that again. I will show that later. Because what we soon found also was that this first generation of valves with air cooling did not have the power enough, so we needed more power, and we had some projects in the pipeline. So people realized that we had to go to water cooling, and it was even so we were beaten in the project because one of our competitors came with water-cooled valves, and they beat us actually in a project in Canada. So we had to do it. And what we did then was to work together with our customers in the Pacific customer to allow us to install a test valve with thyristors and water-cooled. And it was placed next to the Mercury arc valves. And in that also you can see the person that what Karl-Erik Olsson again he invented a system where you could replace a thyristor without opening the water circuit. This was one of his typical, very practical, very simple ones. And another example of practicality was that if you take the fitting where you attach the water pipe, we've tried to develop an absolutely fail-safe connection for this water pipe. And we worked quite a lot with this, and all of a sudden Karl-Erik came and said, I found the ultimate solution, he said. Because it's a perfect solution, it's absolutely safe, and anyone can mount this because it's so simple. And that is exactly the same connection you have in a dishwasher in the home. If you think about it, it's super simple, you don't need any special tools, and it's very simple, and it's safe. And that's the one that we're sitting there. It's actually a copy of the same fitting you have in a dishwasher. Another example of inventions that were created by you had to do something. It was about when we were about to build also the next generation of in Pacific Inter with thyristor valves. And of course, earthquakes requirement was very, very tough. And at that time we had the base design was the valves were standing on the floor. And then people thought that if you have earthquake, we must make this thing stronger so it can stand earthquake. Again, same guy, Karl-Erik Olsson, said, no, that's wrong. We will make it weaker and hang it from the roof. That was a revolution. And I can also say this, we patented this, and this is one of the few patents we were able to use against our competitors. It was interesting because when ABB was formed many years later, there was a lawsuit from ASEA to BBC for this. They had infringed our patents. So they were saved by the bell by this. So this was again, and I would say, for me it's interesting that a lot of the great inventions that have been made are quite simple. And of course we have also super complicated things that have been done, but also quite basic things that have an enormous impact. Today this is the standard design how you, even if it's not an earthquake, it doesn't need to be an earthquake, it's simply cheaper. So in 78, the total installed capacity in the world was 10,400 megawatt. The total installed in the world since ever back. There were only 5 new projects commissioned in the whole 1970s. 5 new projects. The market was weak, and I was then working in the US. We were commissioning a project there, and I was. People advised me to leave the company, actually. Then one of the also classical leaders, he came, what was his name? Per Danfors, of course. He came out and said, Bo said, hang on there, because we have just submitted a tender to Brazil. And at that time, the entire HVDC operation was 40 people. We were actually 38, I think, to be precise. Yeah. So, we were 40 people, so 40 people had then submitted a bid, was to be the largest export order in Swedish history, the Itaipu, which was, and remember then the total installed base was 10,000 megawatt. This was 6,000 megawatt in one project. And it was, of course, an enormous undertaking. I remember when this order was announced, there was a local reporter from Ludvika tidning. He came and he asked the boss of the operations here, well, will this lead to new employment? And he said, I cannot rule that out, he said. And in the next 2-3 years, we spent most of the time to recruit people. And I think we went from 40 up to 300 in about 2 years. I spent also a lot of my time. If you talk about management time today, I think that a lot of managers do not spend enough time on recruitment. They do other things that are less important, because if you want to to be responsible for the operation. Of course, one of the key things is to make sure that you get the right people on board. That's a learning for me. Today it's distributed to some remote organization, and in the worst cases they make it by tests. That I hate tests. A lot of the great people we hired should never pass all these recruitment tests. But again, remember what I said here, we have in this super big project, we changed everything, basically everything. We changed valve technology. We introduced single board computers, incredible at the time. We had new modules, we had a new transformer design, and eventually also this project, I would say, this is one of the points in time I could say, without E-Type, I don't think there would have been any HVDC here at all. Because this project saved the entire technology. And so it kept us busy for 10 years. Because if I then jump up to 1990, global capacity was 33,000 megawatt. And this is not only what ABB was supplying, but the global. And still, there was very few projects. And the market was again slowing down. There was increased competition. And we can see the market changing over to Asia. And there were a lot of again, the entire business was questioned. Will this really take off? And it's also, since it's so intermittent with these big projects, how can we survive? And I think there again, we used, at that time I was in a managerial position. I used my time also to try to convince top management about that time will come, of course. I said, it's tough now, but wait a minute, it will come. And then about at this time, Gunnar Asplund, who was, that was interesting, a lot of you know Gunnar Asplund. And Gunnar, he had been project manager for E-Type, for the biggest project of all. When the project was finished, he came and told me what I'm going to do. And I said, Gunnar, you should become R&D manager. R&D manager? What is that? I said, because that's everything you like is R&D. And he said, how big is the budget? Because the budget for E-Type was billions. I said, well, it's not that big, but it's, you will have some money. But I think I can promise you that you will have, I will support you anytime you have a great idea. And then Gunnar created this iconic picture from 1992, where Gunnar said, okay, I can see we will have a 100% renewables system in Europe, and we will connect everything with DC cables or with cables, and we will have hydrogen storage. That was his idea at the time. This picture, I can say, was when I presented this to the top manager, they said, you're absolutely forbidden to show it outside the company, because no one they will think we have become crazy. So we will not be trusted. So this was had secret stamp for a few years, I think until 1994. We could not use it. And you have to realize that at that time when Gunnar made that statement, the PV modules cost $12 per watt. Today they cost 0.1. Wind cost was $2,000 per watt, and now it's about half. Batteries also, which I have been working quite a lot at that time, were about 9,000, and today they are at about 78. And why was Gunnar so convinced that prices would come down? Well, said Gunnar, there are two ways to bring down cost. One is economy of size. And economy of size means if you build a wind turbine, if you build a bigger wind turbine, the price per kilowatt will go down. There is another way to do it, and that is by volume. If you make many. That's, for instance, PV cells. The more PV cells you make, the lower the cost is. And that's a fact, said Gunnar. And then I said to Gunnar, but how low can the price become? What is the rock bottom price? How much calculation do you need to do? And Gunnar said, yeah, you don't need to calculate at all. It's so basic, it's so simple. It's 1.5 times material cost. That's it. You wouldn't believe how many times I've used this formula. When people come to me and say, we have a fantastic idea, and I can bring down, and we'll be so cheap. The first, can I see the bill of materials? I say, okay, you're wrong, because you cannot even pay for the material. So, just by looking at this, already at that time, Gunnar realized how cheap PV cell, photovoltaic cells will become. Because if you look at the bill of material at that time, the cost of a PV cell was about almost 1,000 times material cost, which of course is horrendous. So today, if you mature a product, how can you come lower in cost? Well, it is only one way to do it: less material or cheaper materials. Today I'm working a lot with batteries, and batteries have dropped dramatically in price. Today batteries are down to 1.5 material cost, which means if you want to push it down more, you have to change materials. And if some of you might have read about sodium batteries. Why do you go to sodium batteries? Cheaper material. So this is one example of, I would say, of almost a tradition of engineering here. Very pragmatic, very practical. But of course, sometimes you needed to do a lot of calculations as well. As a result of this vision from Gunnar, we made a strategic work in 1994, where we said, okay, we believe that the market today, which is predominantly is overhead lines, and then of course you can increase the power capacity with reactive power compensation or with DC. You can use less line, but eventually you will have to go underground. And that was our objective at that time. The environmental pressure will actually reduce the possibilities to build overhead, and technology will help the underground or the subsea cables to become more competitive. But and that was so to say the trigger for developing a new generation of technology. But then we also said we have to split it up. One new technology with voltage source converters, which we called HVDC Light. We had actually a name competition there. I was the one-man jury and decided HVDC Light. Because at that time we thought that if we were going to build small ones, we talked about, was it like 30-50 megawatt or something? And many small ones. And we should use that in the European market. At the same time, we saw that the classic technology had actually moved to Asia, and especially in China. So we had two things going on in parallel. One was to develop the new technology, and the other one was actually to continue to develop the traditional technology. And I think also internally at that time, by rightfully saying, well, the new technology is only be for small stuff. For the big stuff, we'll keep the traditional. And then it's a separate talk. I will only spend one slide of it, but we should all remember that the classical technology that then moved from to China. And then again in China, we did the same thing that we've always been doing in HVDC. We work very, very closely with the customers. And they actually triggered us and helped us to develop technology. And of course, Gunnar Flies, sitting here, he's the only man that was known by his first name in China, Mr. Gunnar, because you gave them the trust. And I remember also when they came to us and said, we want to buy 800 kilowatt. And I think you actually pulled the leg a little to trigger them to buy. But that's a different story. I recommend you have a separate session with Gunnar about this technology, because the rest I will talk about the HVDC Light story. And again, I said this is a product that has been, is bigger than the JAS project, if you look today. Look at the order backlog for light is much bigger than JAS. And I think also done with less subsidies. But the first project was in 1992. And at that time, ABB was formed in 1988. And after 4 years, the management started looking into how much of the portfolio we are selling is new products. And the answer was nothing. We were only selling, so all the development had basically stopped, and we had fighting between different units, who should do what. So they created something they called HIP project, high impact projects. So you could actually apply from corporate level to get funding for a project that had high risk but also high impact. So we applied, and we got 40 million SEK, which was quite a lot of money. And then we decided to convert the first power line, which was from Ludvika to Grängesberg, to DC. That was a little marketing trick. It was quite clever, I think. So we transformed this into DC. And of course, it was a very small project, but what we showed that we could actually serious connect IGBTs, which was a new generation of semiconductors. And I can tell you this, just to make it possible to serious connect, a lot of people didn't believe us. I remember there came a delegation from ABB in Finland, because they had made a calculation to show that it was impossible, theoretically impossible. But we managed to do it. But also, this project was unique in another sense, for we did not develop a new valve, we developed a complete new system. And the new system had of course new valves, but it had also new semiconductors. It had a completely new control system with much higher performance in the past, and new cables. And I remember also when because one of the differences between the classic technology and the new technology is, for classic technology, when you test the cable, you have to go from full voltage plus to full voltage minus. With the VSC technology, you only have to go from plus to 0 or minus to 0. So the stress was half. So it made it possible actually to make extruded cables. And we had an extremely intensive group of research group together. We were at that time the biggest customer of corporate research in Västerås also. And I will not go through all the detail, but I think it's interesting that a lot of I said the theories that was behind Uno Lamm that he developed, you can also find in Gunnar. One thing was of course the visionary thing, but I would also like to point out here the market creation, because Uno Lamm created a market, and also the HVDC light also, they opened up a new market, new markets actually. And that was one of the key things that we managed to do. So this new technology that we said, we are going to open up new markets. One was connection of remote loads, one was connection of wind power, one was connection of offshore platforms, one was underground subsea, and then it was power quality. We had actually one more, that was city infeed. I just saw that Hitachi commissioned this week, I think, or last week, a big city infeed in India. I think it's the first city infeed sold ever. Yes. So it took some time. But back to this product, because this is another message, I don't dig too much in it, but we wanted to build a bigger prototype. And then we made the classical, I would say, Swedish trick that we worked together with a public company, with Vattenfall on Gotland. So Vattenfall, ABB paid one third of the project, Energimyndigheten grant 1/3, and Vattenfall paid 1/3. And that we started building this new project. We thought that once we are done with this, people will be drowning in orders. That did not happen, because And I happened to read at the time, a fantastic book was released the same year. It's a guy called Christensen, it's called The Innovator's Dilemma. And this is one of the, I would say, the most insightful books I've ever read about R&D. Because it's that you have to realize that if you have a disruptive information, something that is really different, first of all, of course it's better in some way, but it's also worse in some ways. And in this case, this technology had much higher losses. Profitability is of course lower. The traditional customers are not interested at all, because they like to be able to specify what they want. And then we should build it. Now it was the other way around. We told them what they should buy. And that was a little more difficult. But then also, what you normally see is that the market grows very slowly. When it takes off very, very sharp. And the first commercialization is usually niche markets, and it's with untraditional customers and untraditional applications. So here we were with this fantastic technology. Not one single customer was interested, despite extreme good efforts from our salespeople. I see some over here. Then we met this guy. His name was Jeff Donahue, and we had just we had delivered a project to. He was CEO of New England Hydro, but we had delivered a project to them together with Hydro-Québec. Then after this, Hydro-Québec formed a new company called TransEnergy US to develop project outside Canada, actually. And then this guy, he heard about this new technology, said, "This is what I want to buy this technology." So he came to us, and then we had not finished the plant in Gotland. And he said that was 60 megawatts. They said, "I would like to have 200 megawatts." I said, "We don't have it." "Okay, I buy 3 then." So that's exactly what he did. He bought 3. And they are green instead of red, and they were delivered to Australia in a product called Direct Link. The only thing that Jeff Donner was interested in was delivery time. And we delivered this product in 24 months, which was, I mean, extremely short, including permitting of the underground cable. Then a few years later, he bought another one called Marilink, which is also underground cable, 200 kilometers underground cable. At the time, the longest underground cable project, transmission project in the world. And if you talk about innovation here, I can tell you a story from this project, because when we wanted to install a power cable, we talked with cable installers in Australia. Normally they install cables that are, I mean, a few kilometers long. This was 200. So we found out that the price for installation would be higher, much higher than the cable. But then one smart engineer in Australia, he said, I know who I will talk to. So he talked to a company that were installing pipelines that had about the same size as a cable. And they installed for about 20% of the cost. They actually installed up to 10 kilometers underground cable in one day. Incredible. Then we moved on to US, and to build another product, still same customer, and all this product, direct negotiation. And in this project, when it come this far, then Jeff said to me that instead of paying too much, you can get ownership, you can get a part of the ownership in the plant. And we said, absolutely not, we are not in that business. We supply things, but we don't own things. So we got the contract in June 2000. Again, in 24 months, the plant was ready. We were extremely proud. But you know that the US is the land of lawyers. So what happened here was that, because whenever you build a cable, there are winners and losers when you connect two cables, two systems. And so the lawyers found, the ones that didn't want the cable, that in a distance of about 100 meters, the cable was buried 6 feet under the seabed, not 8, as in the permit. So they blocked the operation of the entire plant. We were not allowed to use it. And it was just sitting there. And I will come back to that. Because in the meantime also, we remember we had this offshore idea. And then we were contacted by Statoil. They said we want to have a new power supply to the Troll platform. It's the biggest platform in Europe. Supply 10% of all natural gas in Europe. So we want to have a power supply to the platform. And I went there, and I had got some probably wrong instructions, but I thought the idea was to build gas turbines out on the platform and bring the power on shore. But I said, no, it's the other way. We should supply power to the platform and shut down the gas turbines. Because there are high CO2 taxes for running the plant. And then I said, how much power you need? Well, they said we need about 40 megawatts, and we would like to have a double so it works. And then I said, look, 40 megawatts, that's too low power because costs will be very high. And he looked and said, boo, he said, I decided it was too expensive, don't I? And he was right, so he bought this. And this is the slide, this is a Statoil slide, and you can see here that we really worked very, very tight with Statoil in this. And they have people in the office watching our shoulder, and the project was extremely successful. But during this work here, 2002 was the year when ABB almost went bankrupt. It was within weeks. People said it had to do, of course, with asbestos, but there were other things also. And the share price dropped by 90% in just a few months. And we were and then also came the pension scandal for some of the managers. Another thing also was that we had ABB had so far had only Swedish managers, Percy Barnevik, Göran Lindahl, and Jörgen Centerman. But then when the crisis came, I mean, Centerman was kicked out, and Jörgen Dohrmann came in, German guy, tough guy, and he started cutting. They cut 45,000 jobs, and they also started divesting everything that they felt didn't make enough profit. And of course, high voltage DC was one of them. I was at that time working in Zurich, and I got the job to get rid of the HVDC operation, to sell them. And I did a very lousy job, so I was slow. And then, sometimes you're lucky. And this time what happened was that in August 2003, was a blackout in New York. And at that time also, the cable was sitting there, ready for operation. And then actually the governor ordered starting of the cable. So this cable helped to restore the power in the worst blackout that ever happened in New York or in US. And that got, of course, a tremendous, I would say, exposure. And this was one of our fans. And look what she said. This is a real picture. She looked at, congratulations to the cross-town team. We did it, Hillary. So we asked Hillary, can we use this in promotion? Of course, she said. So we still use it. So that was, then I can say that this technology was established and it was saved, and it was saved by this event. Otherwise it would have been gone. It would have ended up in Quebec, can also tell you. So then people started talking about offshore grids, and again, then I met this guy, Eddie O'Connor. He was an entrepreneur, he was building wind power, and he had the idea to build what they call the super grid in the North Sea. And he was considered to be quite a little, off, a little too spectacular. But what we did there, we said, okay, if you want to build it, we have technology to do it, because people said it cannot be done. But we said, of course it can be done, but you can use DC for this. And that resulted in that, in the time frame between 2005 and 2010, a number of projects were built actually offshore. And we started, that business was also, people that knows about it, it was very tough. The company lost a lot of money on some of the projects. But at that time also, I think management was convinced that, and this was probably a good solution anyway. So we were allowed to continue. In 2000, so far, ABB was the only supplier in the world of this technology. In 2007, and I remember this very well, because in 2007, around in the spring of 2007, internet was quite new thing at that time. I'm an early adopter. I was surfing on the internet, and all of a sudden I found a presentation that Siemens had made in India, where they presented something called HVDC Plus. And in this presentation they showed that, well, they are going to use VSE technology, and said, this is what people normally are doing, and this is what ABB was doing. We have a better idea, which is called multi-level. And they presented this in detail. And they said we will become leaders in the VSE-based technology because we have a better technology. I gave this presentation to Gunnar Asplund just before holidays. That was what I gave. Said, take a look at this, Gunnar, because it doesn't look good for us. So Gunnar, I've heard from his wife later, he spent the whole vacation on looking at this. Calculating, Gunnar was calculating, really calculating. So when I met him after the vacation, Gunnar said, look, I looked through this, and it's clear they have a better technology than we, number one. Number two, they have miscalculated the losses because they are even lower than they said. And they are much lower than what we have. Let's say, don't you have any good news? Good news is I know how we can copy what they've done without infringing the patents. Again, lessons learned here is that, and so in October, when Siemens launched, we had already started designing the new technology, the copycat with multi-level. So this is, and they also got a contract, by the way, first contract Siemens. So in just a few years later, actually, this is a Hitachi show. We started developing generation 4, and in 2010 we got a contract for the first generation 4. Then we had, so to say, caught up with Siemens. And what I'm talking about this is that because normally engineers are very proud, they don't admit that someone is better. I think the beauty of these people, they could see this is smart, it's better. So we have to step up and we have to do it. And that's why ABB could recover the leadership. You can also see on this chart that the losses went down dramatically. With the high losses we had in our design at that time, I think Siemens would have beaten us every time in the future. But we came back on track. Then in 2010 also, you remember this idea to build an offshore grid in the North Sea. In 2010, 12 countries around the North Sea signed an agreement to develop a grid in the North Sea together with wind power. And this started, I would say, a build out of the wind power. And the development has been spectacular because this is what has happened so far. And this is what you will expect to happen. So we believe that, of course, you know, there are a lot of contracts here, but the development has just started. And also, if you look at the map of Europe here, all the blue lines are DC lines. So if you look at how much money is spent on transmission in Europe, 50% is DC today, 1/2. It used to be 2%, now it's 50%. In China, I would say Gunnar is probably 1/3, roughly, which is DC. So, and also the DC technology which the world can live without. You remember that statement? I'm not sure they can anymore because this is a slide that shows what is said, the 6 key technologies for development. This is a brand new slide. 6 new technologies that will, so to say, build the new energy system. And it's to generate electricity is PV and wind. to transport and store its batteries and HVDC lines. Today I work a lot with batteries. And then on the use, it's heat pumps and EVs. So these are the 6 key technologies. And HVDC is one of them, which I think is remarkable. And it shows that people, I would say, that betted on the technology were in a way right. So then this was interesting, this HVDC light project, if I call it, is actually, there is a doctoral thesis made on this project, where a guy has written a thick book about this, and he has also summarized why the project was successful, which I didn't know, but I have to check. He told me. So he said, number one, he said, well, the company created a safe haven for the development team. The R&D team was, I was so to say, protected. And were given resources. That was one of the key factors. Another thing that is, I didn't think about it so much, that of course there was an internal potential conflict between people working with the traditional technology and the new. Because you have to realize that in the beginning, the new technology guys, they had all the fun. The guys working with the traditional, they had to make the things work, and also bring money into the company. Because the traditional technology paid the development of the new. But then I think it was one way to do that. One way to do that is that we had every week we had a meeting. You remember Björn? We had this HVDC light meetings to keep people informed. So people should be, even those people that were not working with the new project, were still felt as a part of it. Then also, this is key, I mean, to lead with questions and not answers. And this is something that goes across every if you go any leadership course, remember this. Don't tell people the answers, but you can have leading questions. That's, by the way, this is something women are very good at. My wife can tell me, don't you think you should? I know what it means. And then also, there will always be crisis. And then you have to protect, so to say, the organization from the crisis, and also to find ways out of it. And because normally a crisis there are two reactions. One is the normal one is a blame game that starts. The other one is more constructive, is actually to try to, instead of finding the blame, find a way out of it. And that I can see, during my years up in Ludvika, I always felt that I was protected by upper management, any time. And I try to act in the same way myself. Then to wrap up this, because it's this story about development, I think can have some interesting aspect, but remember also it was close to be dead, killed in a few times. It survived. Today we know all that answer, we are where we are. And then if you sum up in leadership principle, this is I would say a classical roadmap, how you can create trust-based leadership. One first point is actually autonomy. If you give people responsibility, you must allow them to act. Transparency, that is, you have to be transparent with the information, good and bad. No punishment for dissent, I mentioned that already. Co-creation is also, and remember, this is a generic slide, and this is, I think, what has always been done here, co-creation. Long-time view, holistic view, and this comes with the vision. Failure means that you have new inputs instead of having made a mistake. I actually found recently, because normally I have on very, very few occasions been writing down speeches. I don't believe in writing down, but I found I've done it once. And that was in 1994. Actually, when they had the annual meeting for rewarding veterans in the company, I made a speech, and that is written down. And of course, instead of having the speech for you, I asked AI, can you summarize the speech in one slide? And it came out this one. So, and it called the Ludvika model, a guide to trust-based leadership. And this is what I said then. First of all, I mean, this is obvious. The company is the people, and it's like a buzzword, but you have to act like that's the fact. Encourage generosity. And one of the things I remember very early when we had the Itapu project, engineers came from Brazil to work here in Ludvika. And then when they got stuck on something, they said, you can go and ask that one. Ask her, you will. And said, it's surprised because I get the answers. Whenever I come, I get the answers. I said, isn't that the way you do? No, I said, in Brazil, knowledge is my asset. So remember that. And then also handle uncertainty with flexibility. The first lesson I had on this was when I actually came to work here in Ludvika. When I was hired to work on the Gotland project. Then 3 months later I came to and knocked on the door and stepped in here. And my boss said, oh, hello, what are you doing? Said, I'm going to start working here. Or haven't they told us about there will be no Gotland project? But then they said, so very quickly they said, okay, so I was there, I was going to design control system for a project that was cancelled. So then I was transferred immediately into another task to develop thyristor coolers, which was quite interesting. But it learned also that you have to be able to adapt. Because things don't always go as you plan. Solutions before blame, I mentioned already, and openness. What I learned here is, of course, that a lot of the people that you see working in this organization, they are for sure not born in Ludvika. They come from somewhere else. And they come from many countries, and also the openness, and also I would say a quite high number of people that are living and working have spent considerable time abroad, either on contract but also been spending. And I think this creates an openness that is almost unique, that you embrace people. And then also leadership that reflects the organization. You cannot have an entrepreneurial organization run by a controller. It doesn't work. And the other way around, by the way, also, the controlling department cannot be represented by an entrepreneur or a risk taker. So that's why sometimes it is critical when they appoint managers to run organizations, they don't see this, how important this is. That the manager must in some way represent the organization. And then investing. I mean, how do you prove to the organization that you trust them? And of course, it's investing in people and investing in new technology, investing in new ideas. So the moment you stop investing, of course, it's very difficult to keep up the spirit. And that's why I was quite happy also when I met this chairman of Hitachi Group. And I've seen, I mean, the enormous investments that are done. And I said to him also, but why did you acquire this Hitachi or these ABB assets in Sweden? Well, I said because when I became the CEO, before he was CEO of Hitachi Group. When I became CEO, Hitachi Group had 90% Japanese employees, 90%. We had not one single manager that was non-Japanese across the world. Then today we have about 70% that are Japanese. My target is 50. And what we're especially watching for when we acquire companies, we want to buy innovation. And what I found in these HVDC operations, so we found innovation and growth. And that's what we have bought. We have bought innovation. And so then you bought it for good reasons. Congratulations. So with that I will finish and I can have some questions. So like, why did you do that or whatever? So thank you for listening.